It was a typical morning on Veterans Day, and I was gearing up for some quiet time when I found myself facing a surprising and incredibly frustrating situation. Imagine pulling up to your own driveway, only to find your HOA. Yes, the very people who are supposed to be keeping the peace, blocking your RV. But this wasn't just any RV. It was a mobile VA clinic, a lifeline for veterans in our community. And none of that seemed to matter to the HOA. They just saw it as an eyesore, something they could control. As I stood there, trying to figure out what was going on, I realized that the people in charge had no idea what they were dealing with. They didn't know this RV was providing crucial healthcare services to veterans, and it certainly wasn't the sort of thing you block without consequences. The situation quickly escalated, but what happened next was even more shocking. In the midst of all this, I had to wonder, were they intentionally ignoring the bigger picture, or was this all just a huge misunderstanding? Stick around to hear what went down next, and trust me, you won't believe how this all unfolded. As I stood there, trying to process what was happening, I could see the HOA members gathered by the entrance of the neighborhood, talking amongst themselves. They were pointing at my RV and shaking their heads like they had just spotted some sort of major violation. The more I tried to explain, the more they seemed determined to ignore me. To them, it was just another RV parked on the street, taking up valuable space. What they didn't realize was that this RV wasn't just any recreational vehicle. It was a fully equipped mobile clinic that brought healthcare to veterans who didn't have easy access to local medical centers. Veterans who had served our country, and now they relied on this clinic for things like routine checkups, physical therapy, and mental health services. I tried to stay calm, but it wasn't easy. I knew I had to get through to them somehow. I tried explaining the importance of the RV, showing them how it was benefiting the community, but the HOA reps were relentless. "It's still a violation," one of them said, arms crossed firmly. "It's not allowed to park here." I was stunned. How could they not understand? Why weren't they seeing the bigger picture? At that point, I realized this wasn't just about parking spaces. There was something else going on, something deeper, and I had to find out what. The more I tried to reason with them, the more I could feel the frustration building. The HOA wasn't budging, and their indifference was beginning to feel personal. I thought back to all the times I had seen them make demands on the neighborhood, from trimming trees that didn't need trimming to enforcing rules about lawn ornaments. This, however, was different. This wasn't just about property standards or aesthetics. It was about real lives, veterans' lives. I asked the HOA rep, the one who had been the most vocal, if she had even considered what this mobile clinic meant to the community. Her response was quick and dismissive. "We don't have the authority to make exceptions for things like that." There it was, bureaucracy at its finest. They were caught up in rules and regulations, unable or unwilling to see beyond them. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. How could people in my own neighborhood be so blind to the bigger picture? I turned to look at the RV, its doors closed, the small American flag fluttering in the breeze. It seemed so out of place now, parked in front of my own home, like an outsider in a place that should have been welcoming. Was it because of the RV's presence that some neighbors were upset, or was there something else going on behind the scenes? Was the HOA really just enforcing rules, or was there something deeper at play? Meanwhile, I noticed a couple of neighbors, ones I had never really spoken to, watching from their windows. They didn't seem to be reacting the way I expected. Some looked uncomfortable, others just curious, but there was one woman, an older neighbor, who was frowning. She knew about the clinic. In fact, she had mentioned it before, so why wasn't she speaking up now? What did she know that I didn't? My mind raced, turning over the possibilities. As the hours passed, more HOA members came by, each more firm in their stance than the last. I felt a sense of urgency build inside me. This wasn't just about a rule being broken. It was about how a community values its members. The more I thought about it, the more I realized there might be a divide here that I hadn't noticed before, a divide between those who understood the value of the RV and its purpose, and those who saw it as a violation to be eliminated. Just as I was about to call a few local veterans I knew for support, something strange happened. The HOA rep who had been the most vocal against the RV suddenly grew quiet. She exchanged an uneasy glance with another neighbor who had joined the scene. Was it fear? Guilt? I couldn't tell, but something was off. It was as if, all of a sudden, they were second-guessing themselves. Could there be more to this than a simple misunderstanding? Was there a bigger story I wasn't seeing? The tension in the air was palpable, and just as I was about to confront one of the HOA members about their change in demeanor, the unexpected happened. A phone call. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and as I pulled it out, I saw the name on the screen. It was the head of the VA clinic, the person who ran it, the one who had helped make all of this possible. "You won't believe what's happening," the voice on the other end said, and I knew instantly that everything was about to change. As I listened to the voice on the other end of the phone, my heart started to race. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but my mind was already racing. The VA clinic head's voice was urgent. "I just got a call from the local authorities. Someone reported the RV as an illegal vehicle. The situation's getting out of hand, and they're pushing to have it removed immediately." I froze. The tension that had been building in the air ever since the HOA blocked the RV now felt suffocating. Everything I had worked so hard for, everything that had been helping veterans in our community, was suddenly under threat. The call had come at the worst possible time. It wasn't just the HOA anymore, it was the local government too. I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything the clinic had done for these veterans. But how could I stop it? I turned back to the HOA members, who were now standing in a tight circle, whispering amongst themselves, occasionally glancing over at me. They were starting to look uneasy, but they weren't backing down. I could tell something had shifted, though. Maybe they were realizing how important this RV really was, or maybe it was just the pressure of the whole situation starting to get to them. Either way, I wasn't going to wait around to find out. The air seemed heavier now, the tension almost unbearable. I could feel the weight of the decision hanging over me. If I let this slip away, the clinic could be shut down. Veterans could lose their access to care. And the worst part, the people who were supposed to protect us, my neighbors, the HOA, seemed to be blind to what was at stake. I stepped forward, my voice shaking but firm. This RV isn't just a parking issue. It's a lifeline for those who serve this country. You have to understand that. My words hung in the air, but none of the HOA reps seemed moved. They simply stood there, arms crossed, as if they were waiting for someone else to solve the problem. I glanced around for any sign of support, hoping for someone to speak up, but the neighbors who had been watching, those who might have known what the RV was doing, were eerily silent. Then, as if out of nowhere, the phone buzzed again. Another call from the VA clinic head. I answered quickly, my heart in my throat. "They've got a tow truck coming," she said, her voice tight with panic. "It's already on the way. If we don't act fast, it'll be gone by the time you get to it." I turned, scanning the neighborhood. The tow truck could be here any minute, and if they took that RV, it could be the end. I couldn't let it happen. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I'm not backing down," I told her, even though I wasn't sure how much time I had left. Every second that ticked by felt like an eternity. My neighbors watched, some with confusion, others with judgment, but none seemed to understand the full gravity of the situation. I felt like I was fighting not just the HOA, but the whole community's apathy. Just then, the older neighbor I had noticed earlier, the one who'd been watching from her window, finally stepped forward. She looked hesitant at first, like she wasn't sure if she should get involved, but then she spoke. "I know what's going on here," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "And you all need to listen." The HOA reps turned, surprised by her sudden involvement. She continued, "That RV has been here before. I've seen the veterans come and go. I know what it means to them. To us." The moment she spoke those words, a shift seemed to happen. The tension in the air thickened. The HOA members exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. They weren't expecting this. Suddenly, it wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about people, about community, about doing what was right. But as the tow truck's lights flickered on the horizon, I knew this battle was far from over. I turned to the neighbor who had just spoken. "Can you help us stop this? We need everyone on our side." She nodded, her face determined. "Let's see if we can't get this turned around before it's too late." But the clock was ticking. The tow truck was getting closer, and I knew it would take more than just words to stop it now. Could we make it in time? Could we get through to the HOA, or was the RV already doomed to be taken away? The final confrontation was about to begin, and everything was riding on what happened next. As the tow truck's lights grew brighter, a sudden chill ran through me. I could feel the panic rising again, but this time it wasn't just about the RV, it was about everything we were standing to lose. The neighbor who had stepped forward, the one who had finally spoken out, suddenly hesitated. Her eyes darted to the crowd of HOA members, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of doubt in her expression. It was as if something was holding her back, like she wasn't sure if she should be fully involved. Before I could ask what was going on, I heard a voice I recognized but hadn't expected to hear. "I think we need to rethink this," said another neighbor, someone I hadn't noticed before. She was the one who always kept to herself, never involved in neighborhood disputes. But now she was walking toward us, her steps determined. "I was one of the first to see the RV when it started coming by," she said, "and I've been watching for a while." The truth is, not everyone agrees with what the HOA is doing here. Some of us don't think it's right to block a clinic that helps veterans. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just one person standing up. There were others who felt the same way. As the second neighbor spoke, more people began to step forward, slowly but surely. The small crowd of silent onlookers was starting to shift, and with every person who spoke up, the power dynamic was changing. But just when it seemed like the tide might be turning in our favor, another bombshell dropped. The HOA president, who had been the most vocal in opposing the RV, raised his hand. He cleared his throat and, to my shock, said, "I never told you this, but I've been involved in a few discussions about the clinic. There's more to this than you know. It's not just about the rules. It's about what happens next." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, everyone stood frozen. The HOA have been pushing so hard to block the RV, but now they seemed to have information that none of us had. My heart sank. Was there something deeper going on? Was this more than just a neighborhood dispute? "I've been in talks with the city," the president continued, his voice quieter now. "There's a new zoning regulation being proposed that could make it impossible for the clinic to operate here at all, RV or not." My breath caught in my throat. The stakes had just been raised to an unimaginable level. If this zoning regulation passed, the clinic wouldn't just be blocked by the HOA, it could be permanently shut down. Veterans in the area would lose access to a vital resource, all because of a regulation that had been quietly moving through the city behind the scenes. I could feel the weight of everything crashing down. It wasn't just about me or the HOA anymore, it was about something far bigger. I turned to the group of neighbors who had stepped up, hoping we could make a stand together. But there was no time to waste. If this zoning rule passed, it would be over. The clock was ticking, and the decision was out of our hands. I could see the resolve in their eyes, but I also saw something else: uncertainty. Some of them hadn't known about the regulation, and it was clear that even those who were on our side were now questioning their next move. How much did they really know about what was at stake? Were they willing to risk it all to stand up for what was right?